Hello, everybody, and welcome at today's session of Modulis Talks. My name is Sophie, and I will be moderating this webinar. For those who have not attended any of our talks before, we organize these sessions as a platform where experts in the design industry come together to share knowledge and ideas. We host these talks at our Modulis showrooms across Europe and online. We are about to start the second talk of this series focused on the power of artificial intelligence in architecture and design. And today we have with us Tim Fu. Tim is a renowned architectural designer specialized in advanced computation and artificial intelligence. Emerging from Zaha Hadid Architects, he recently founded Studio Tim Fu, a high-tech design practice pioneering the integration of AI into visionary design. I invite Tim to share his insights with you.
Thanks, Sophie. All right, so let's just get right to it. So prior to going deeper into AI, just a backdrop, I am a computational designer and architectural designer. So my specialization comes from working with complex geometries that usually entails the use of mathematical algorithms and generative architecture. So rather than the normal top-down style of architecture, we try to create ideas from rules and data sets in a way that generates usually rather complex geometries in that sense. So that type of skill set I took to offices mainly in London. I worked for IGP Architects as project lead. Here I use my computational design strengths to design a footbridge in Dubai. And this is using algorithms of structural optimization as well as parametric design to create the Islamic patterns as a set of a complex bridge structure. And finally, that landed me to Zaha Hadid Architects. For over 2 years, I was working on master plan projects, and I became a specialist in rationalizing facade geometries. And so I going from tower to tower, organizing data structures and uh, converting complex geometries and ease of fabrication and construction. So the realization aspects of the complex geometries. And so eventually, how did I get started with AI? That really started around July of 2020, a bit over a year ago. That's when I started seeing a lot of AI generated contents online. A lot of them tagged Zaha Hadid Architects, designed by Zaha Hadid. I got curious and I decided to give it a try on my own. And that's when I started to experiment. And initially, the early phases of the Midjourney version 3 was chaotic. It was a bit more artistic and expressive. And so there lacked control and understanding of reality in that sense. So I started to on my end, try to figure out how to create realism and constructability in my explorations. So gradually, I learned to manipulate the algorithm to control it in a way that is refined enough that it presents a potential feasible architectural construction. And I started to pump out, ideas one by one as a sort of standalone, holistic architectural concept. And so I kind of started experimenting these concepts and eventually started teaching as well Midjourney architecture at the PA Academy. And that's when I learned to slowly codify a lot of my approaches, learn to going through the observation and noting down the methodologies and achieving such results. And so eventually this became a systematic thing where I began to really fine tune my approach to talking to the machine. And so my ability improved while the algorithms also improved. From last year to now, there's been a huge jump in the in the capabilities of the AI. And so see that more recently today, you're able to geometries that are very well refined in terms of the construction detail as well as a potential for feasible application in real life, but also the photorealism and the artistry in the visuals that it presents itself. So in many ways, it's able to convey a lot of the the profound concepts that you have as an idea into reality. And a lot of these things takes times to push towards what you want. And I gone from pavilions to exteriors, also using the similar ideals to generate interiors in a way to create a cohesive narrative picture and the concept generation. So it was a very interesting period where I've experimented with multitude of different stylistic architectural expressions, and to a degree of construction design you can see on the interior and exterior, where the tectonics of the architecture is expressed to such a degree that you're able to really understand how to really realize it in real life in construction. So this all became a very interesting experiment for me. And so, for example, to give you an idea of the process I go to nowadays, you start with a list of prompts you wanted to generate, and then you manipulate the text and you generate a plethora of ideas, and you understand the behavior of the on how well you generate the prompts. And you write the prompts, the more adapted it is to your actual idea, then the better it is to generate the outcomes. And so once the prompt is good enough, you're able to generate better prompts. And so here, for example, I would select the one that I find to be the best out of the results of the best prompt. And then from there, you just try to push it. You take an upscale, and then you can further vary it gradually or strongly. For example, this is a Midjourney. You have these options. If you have an idea that's relatively fixed, then you can generate and iterate over your existing ideas. Or if you just want to take the general concept, the mood, the atmosphere, and the general architectural language, see what creativity that A has, then you can also go the varying it quite a lot. So it's a different way of thinking in the way you create concepts, and it really does help a lot in a concept creation phase. Much akin to how you would use, early precedence studies, Pinterest going on Google Images, and this is like a superpower version of that, where you're able to bring in your own ideas to a relatively resolved stage. And then once you have chosen some ideas that you really like, you can still further finesse it. And that's by taking further variations, generating potentially the details that you like, picking certain areas that you can vary. So you can now vary region by region of the image, and you can prompt over that to fix it the way you like. So the degree of control has improved significantly since the beginning of using Midjourney to now. And as they are developing this technology, I think you will find that it becomes less of a automation and more of a human intent as the controls becomes more refined. So as an example, if you just have some concept as words on the left, you would see what happens if I just type it out without going into the refinement process. You could generally get something interesting, but you will also get a sort of default aesthetics that comes from the algorithm, because it's always biased towards whatever database it has. So, for example, the pure output from the text prompt on the left is as such, but then after going through the refinement process, you could arrive at something you would see more like on the right. So, improvement of the style, the the architectonic, as well as the detail resolution, and also the overall mood and ambient of the image. So, there's a lot that the human designer can do to input creatively in this process. So again, many people would say that it's a very quick process of typing a bunch of text and you get an image, which is true, and that's the images you would get on the left. But then the part where you incorporate your own aesthetics and design, that's where you can take it to the next level. And we see examples of that from my students at the Architecture Academy. These are my students' work. I've given them a prompt, given them a client requirement, for example, and this was a mixed-use building hosting office and residential, and it has to be inspired by honeycomb structure that is constructed with steel and glass. So you can see people's different interpretations of it. Some are more successful, some are less, and it goes to show the kind of the human necessity, the requirement of the human input in order to get quality results. Some of my favorite ones at the top. So it's an incredibly human process, and everybody will achieve a certain different degree of success with it. And so now this comes to a point where we want to incorporate more human design aesthetics. And this is, for example, using hand sketch. I don't know why it's not really giving me the sorry, 1 second. For some reason, it's not showing me. Okay, we're gonna ad hoc this. So this is the original hand sketch. Since the animation is not working very well, I'll just show you guys here. And then you use the text prompt to then evolve your hand sketch into something detailed. And then finally, it will eventually even become something more akin to a commercial quality render. So I think that's very powerful because you're incorporating that human touch into it. And then same thing with the massings. You could start with a massing like that, incorporating it into an AI and allowing it to automatically present a detail if you type in, for example, in the style of Zaha Hadid. So I found that to be quite fascinating that we can just do that. And then furthering on, you could even crumble a piece of paper very easily and then prompt certain architects and allowing them to generate your idea for you and creating details. And sorry, apologies. I don't know why the not working for this particular one now. But the idea is you can also take morphologies in nature, getting inspired by it, and then that directly into the AI and seeing how potential architectural forms can be outputted. So that's also an interesting approach, a different approach to the creative, the creative approach. So the creative process is a bit something that you can configure now differently according to the AI. And we find that quite fascinating to be able to find alternative ways in creating architectural forms and gathering new ideas. And another concept very interesting is potentially the combination of two very concepts that normally don't fuse. So here is a very funny example. I combining a villa with a guitar, different scales, different use, but the ability of AI to really reconcile distinct concepts and merge into something actually interesting and feasible potentially is quite astonishing. You can see how it's able to fuse ideas and still allow it to be resolved to such. And so with that idea, I incorporated a lot of classical architecture, which I really like, with contemporary narratives. So here is, for example, combining the Renaissance architectural styles with a more contemporary reinvention. And because I love classical style much, I also tried it with Gothic architecture, and you can see how able to really capture the essence of potentially what it is Gothic architecture represents, but it's also able to really provide a contemporary reinvention of it. So really fusing it in a way the two styles that you think would actually work together. I find that quite interesting as well. And so the next step is how to construct these things in real life. And I took my first steps in taking one of those renders and understanding like how we can break down this architecture into just components. And so for here example is one where I taken that and then I've just broken it down into, for example, the column capital, which is a portion of the architecture that's usually very expressive. And I reinvented using contemporary aesthetics. And so with an AI image, I've modeled that in 3D and then produced drawings out of it. And then from the drawings, I've given it to a collaborator, a stonemason by the name of Till Apfel, who is working in Dresden in his workshop. And he's able to actually read very accurately these drawings that are generated by AI and the computer to be able to produce a result that is very close to the actual AI image itself. So one of the very first steps taken to generate AI creations to real life. This was featured at the during the Venice Biennale at the Borders Arts Fair, and so it's a first step into seeing if we can potentially realize these processes. And this is just a a rather manual approach, but we can imagine the use of machine and computation and machine fabrication in order to generate these ideas and bringing it further. And so that's where I created my own studio, Studio Tim Fu, where I am now gathering projects in real life and trying to pursue a design, an AI oriented firm in order to realize some of these concepts on a large scale. And we have some large scale projects in works, and hopefully we will be able to talk about them soon. But on a smaller scale, what's easier to do are also products. They can come out a lot quicker. I've collaborated with a Italian furniture company called Mavimat, who does these incredible artisan furnitures that are machine and handcrafted. And so generating these concepts are incredibly quick, and then um, you evolve the design to the aesthetics that you like, and then you model it in 3D. So I found that to be quite interesting that we're able to just do that. And I also dabble into fashion as well. When the fashion product company Sprayground approached me, we offered to design a hyper future contemporary version of their bag and luggage series. So it's an interesting way that AI is able to also kind of cross disciplines as a designer, that you're very able to quickly realize these concepts from different aspects, from product to furniture to architecture. And so this is a proposed product. And so with Studio Tim Fu, I think there's a lot more that AI can be involved. And right now, I'm in the process of adapting all of these concepts, going AI concept exploration, like I've showcased so far with Midjourney. Using AI to render when you have the massing is something very powerful, as you've seen. And also AI programming distribution, architectural resolution, using AI to potentially configure into BIM modeling. That is right now in development on the tech side, and we are right now trying to catch up when these things are happening. We are going to be able to readily adapt it. And AI generative detailing and construction documentation, I think to a certain degree, we'll be able to gradually increase the involvement of AI in the different aspects of architecture and construction. And right now, we're just seeing the really early phases of using AI. Here, for example, is using parametric design to create, programming elements, generative programming architecture, as I've shown earlier. And then this is a very early phase of real-time AI texturing, rendering, I believe using a form of stable diffusion. And so I tried to incorporate so far the technologies, but they're all in its early phases. Here as well is an example of using Runway, which is a type of AI that converts images into videos. And this is a very quick way to allow images to come to life, to narrate a spatial quality. And I think that's a very quick and dirty way to generate some architectural concept that gives at least the design team and potentially the client some early sneak peek into the design space and a little video walkthrough. And these are mere seconds. So I think the power comes in the ability to generate these at such a rapid pace, and for us designers to feed that back into the design loop, we're able to make design decisions a lot faster because we're able to see a lot of the ideas and concept in rapid fire. We would have all these ideas in the matrices, and we would be able to make these decisions at a very rapid pace. And then finally, I also use genetic algorithms as an example experiment to use a different form of AI to optimize a architectural space for solar shading of the courtyard space, um, maximizing the GFA, as well as responding to contextual narratives like the views and how it's blocked by the neighbors versus it's open. So all these are human and real life contextual parameters that can be incorporated by a form of AI to optimize for. So once you hook that directly into AI, you can also hooked into the diffusion AI, you're also able to visualize it very quickly, these forms, as they are being resolved. And so programs like this will optimize the form to a final version, and they will experiment to all the different different massings and calculate which one is most optimal. And then finally, once you have the optimized form, you're able to then just quickly run through different styles, and just to get an idea of what are potential ways to generate the architecture off of. And what you're all witnessing here are very early phases of these technologies, and this is more of a proof of concept. But I'm very confident that these technologies will be brought to the next level once we have the technology to create very refined results. So I think to conclude, the future is very interesting, and we're going to see AI becoming more and more involved in all of our design processes. And it is, universally agreed that we're going to see a lot more AI in the future, from calculations to computational design to construction and fabrication, and to the way we design our world in the future. So I will conclude here. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Very exciting, all this. We have received questions. So if that's okay, we will go, I will pick out the first one. Any advice on writing a good prompt, do's and don'ts?
Okay. So prompt crafting is a very interesting process. Good prompts in general, I do have a course because it's so complex. I have a course just to talk about prompt crafting, which is insane if you think about it. But the idea is that you want to write simple prompts, not too long, so that you're able to control it. The idea is to go through a trial and error process, that you're testing the words one by one, understanding the implications of your words as you insert them. So I always suggest to start easy and then go complex. Don't just type in a whole paragraph, because by then you're gonna find it very hard to control your prompt. So the idea is to be able to generate, like, additively going from simple to complex, add text by text, test them out, seeing the behavior, and then testing the various modifier parameters that Midjourney, for example, offers to further change the algorithm and then adapt to your advantage. So what I've done is done this for a year. I've notated all the observations, the behaviors, and it became a course that I teach. But really, it's time consuming thing where you really have to understand the behavior of the AI. And as new AI gets updated, there's also changes in this behavior. So you got to treat it like science, where you have to, do trial and error, test these things, note down the observations, and then eventually you'll realize that once you know these things, it becomes a lot easier to control, and you can get what you would like as a result.
Okay, thank you. There are a lot of questions coming in. I will take the next one. Are you saying AI application and architecture remains in 2D imagery creation, and to turn to reality or 3D data at the moment still requires manual interpretation and input?
Yes. So that's kind of like the holy grail of where AI is going in architecture. Um, I know some insights that, for example, Midjourney, right now they are developing uh, Midjourney going into 3D, so direct 3D diffusion model generation. And I've also was at the ICE conference, and I've talked with the guys that are developing stability, and from what I heard, they also now investing heavily into generating 3D models. Uh, I've yet to know exactly how the output is going to be. I'm assuming it's mesh based due to approximation from their database. But that's essentially the next step when all these diffusion models are able to really hallucinate, I would say, accurate representations of these models. Then you're able to take that into back into these programs that we use in architecture, refine it, and then generate more accurate architecture. And it can also be developed as plugins, APIs directly to our 3D software. Very minimum, it will be able to generate assets for us, like trees, people, cars, maybe a column, maybe a Romanesque style facade. And it might be in components. And maybe we can generate these step by step, almost like a video game map creation. And eventually that leads to architecture. So I think on the technology side, a lot of things are rapidly changing, and I'm seeing these things really just changing day by day. I'm looking at news every day and trying to adapt towards it. But for sure, in architecture, we're going to see a huge advantage when these things go 3D automatically. I'm only doing like the manual part right now because that's the necessity. But eventually, I think you will see a lot of AI being able to generate high quality 3D.
Okay, great. Next question. Have you used AI directly in the generation of parametric algorithms themselves?
So I've had colleagues have done that. I've not done it, but I know colleagues that use ChatGPT to generate scripts and codes that then you incorporate into, for example, Grasshopper and Rhino. And I know that there are plugins in Grasshopper using ChatGPT. Right now, I think it's on the sort of the. It's not as advanced to a point where it generates substantially better assets that would overtake what we do manually. I much prefer manually scripting these ideas and letting it come to life very quickly. I think the AI is not trained yet well enough to do that automatically, but I guess that's also something that time will tell. I'm sure that I'll have a look at that once it's the technology has matured to a point where we can apply it more feasibly.
Okay. And another completely different kind of question. Someone who is asking if there are career opportunities for non-architects in AI for architecture.
Wow, it's an interesting question. Yeah, I definitely think so. Right now, before AI, there's a lot of non-AI career opportunities and non-architecture opportunities in architecture. All the different services that you require that surrounds architecture is always up for grabs. With AI, for example, I can already just think about very specific instances where you will need people to control the AI, but it might not be someone who needs to practice architecture. Like, for example, model refinement. If you are someone who is into modeling, if you're a game designer, if you're someone who is just good with, working with 3D, I think there's going to be a huge demand in the near future where a lot of AI generated content will require human refinement, and a lot of AIs as well will require um, people that do coding so that you can adjust the parameters yourself. And I think they will also require people that are not computationally savvy as well, who will require people that are potentially in the data collection business, who will look around the internet and look for data for training sets. We will need to have a huge amount of data sets in order to train these AIs. And so gathering these data itself is a full-time career in the future when training your own models becomes an everyday occurrence in architectural practice. And also then you'll need to create your own data sets as well by generating your own architectural concepts and then training your AI with it. I mean, my imagination can go wild, when it comes to what's possible with people and their careers in the future. But it all depends on where the technology goes and how we restructure the architecture industry, which right now is a question mark. We're gonna see at what extent AI is able to do human tasks, and then we'll be
Yeah.
able to see what we can replace. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's actually we see many of those type of questions coming in, like, but you partly already answered this. But a specific one was here. Do you believe AI renders will substitute renders made by humans completely, or do you view it as complementary to the design process? And I think you already answered this question partly, and that there's
Yeah, I could
still
add a little
yeah.
bit.
Mm,
Rendering, I believe, yeah, like I've always said, is probably one of the first things that's going to be heavily replaced with AI. But the human role is still very important as a someone who is controlling the output. As a renderer, you obviously have the skill sets of knowing what type of imagery you're looking for, and you have visual quality and aesthetics. Like a photographer with a camera. Photography didn't replace the painter. It just created a new medium in which we require the artistry of photography. So the artistry of AI rendering, I believe, will also be extremely necessary. So for us, the human role is to be able to use these AI tools and still be able to generate creativity and concepts that are required for specific use cases. So I think the human role is ever so present, but certain aspects of that creative process will be replaced by the machines.
okay. Thanks. Another question related to the presentation. What was the name of the image to video animation app?
Yeah, that's called Runway ML. Runway ML. This is a very interesting one that is going through rapid growth right now. Literally, I think, yeah, there it is. Literally, like 2-3 months ago is when I started using it, and then they went from Gen 1 to Gen 2. Like about 2-3 weeks ago, they went to Gen 2, and it's experiencing the same type of growth that Midjourney had experienced last year when it went from version 3, and then a few months later version 4, and then a few months later version 5, and we've seen so much improvement. And right now with ML, these image to video AI machines are literally going through that same phase of growth, and I find it incredibly fascinating.
Okay, thanks. Also related to this, to the programs, we have a question. You mentioned Midjourney and Runway. Is there any other programs you're using at the moment?
Oh yes, definitely. So for example, this particular one, you cannot generate this with Midjourney because it generates new ideas and concept, and it doesn't take the original contour and massing. So for this one, I use LookX. LookX is an AI that's trained specifically on architectural data. So it's very helpful to our industry. And for instances here, I input the massing and then I type in the prompt as a sort of render result that I'm looking for, and then it generates all these immediately. So you can see the potential use of this type of AI for architecture. You generate only the massing now instead of detailing it, instead of rendering it with ray tracing. You are able to really quickly gather concepts just by using AI to convert it. So that's LookX.
Okay. Questions are still coming in. We have something different. It's focused on design. Will the combination of AI aided design and 3D printing lead to the accessibility of top design to the majority of the people?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part?
Yeah, the question is if the combination of AI aided design and 3D printing will lead to accessibility of top design to majority of the people.
Yeah, so that touches upon the subject of how AI is gradually democratizing the way we can design, and I think that's an important point to address. For example, even talking about rendering like these, it allows people with little or no knowledge of technology, as well as little or no knowledge of modeling, in order to generate idea quickly and present high level concept to be able to compete potentially with even industry quality rendering companies. And that same happens with tools like 3D printing, and allowing things to be able to be readily designed and fabricated that are extremely complex. Again, yes, when 3D AI comes into fruition, we'll be able to generate these ideas directly in 3D and then potentially print it out. So I do see a really high potential for example, just name random place that are not well developed but has resources. If you send, for example, prototypers that can print on sand, that can print concrete, and you're able to allow the local population to use these tools at a very low budget using a laptop to be able to generate these concepts, and then potentially just having a small construction crew that can feed the prototypers to be able to generate these components and then assemble these components in real life. So I can see complex geometry and beautiful architecture arising in various developing countries that do not have access to all these advanced computational design and construction tools that we currently use in the industry, to be able to design these very beautiful forms in a very finite amount of time and resource. So I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, indeed. We still have some questions, and we have only a couple of minutes left. It's more questions about your vision, your opinion. Do you think there will be a point in time where the client will go directly to AI for the whole design package, including construction drawings?
Okay, yeah, this always reminds me of that joke where it says the client can never let AI replace the architect because the client never know what they want. So that's the joke. But in reality, is that yeah, we already have clients that do come to us with AI generated images already, and they're bringing that into discussion, which I think is quite interesting, to allow clients some degree of that sort of that creative conversation to a deeper level. But again, the client is a client, and we're the architects and designers. We're hired because we have a vision and a view that they require. So if they want to be the designer, they can do it themselves. If they're great designers, then great. They don't actually need to hire a designer. But if you're looking for quality design and artistic input, it's very much the same as if you know you have a camera now. Now it's like mass produced. Anybody can take a photo. Do you still require a photographer? Yeah, most people say no, I don't. I'm just gonna take selfies or something of a product and put it on eBay and sell it. But then some people will require a photographer when they need to because they want better photography. They want better photos. And same thing with AI generated content and architecture and design. You hire us not because we have that you don't have. You hire us because we design better. So that's really I think the gist of it is that we're the service providers and we have that abilities that the client require.
Yep. Thanks. Maybe one last question. Also, opinion question. What's your opinion on presenting these renders to the client? They can seem to be over-promising at an early stage. Additionally, looking at the cost implications for such projects.
Yeah, so that's one of those things you really have to be careful with, because yeah, we don't just go to clients with images unless it's refined enough, and then you also have to really highlight that it's a concept. And also eventually, once you model in 3D, you can accompany it with the 3D model, so that you let the client understand that this is the visual aesthetic style that I'm going for, but here is the actual 3D model that's resolved, that generates the follows the correct programmatic requirements, contextual requirements, and all the things that you need to address as an architect. So I would say AI is also, these images are there to accompany you, because at this phase of our current development of AI, we're not able to really generate precise output that really follows all the requirements, unless you're using programs like LookX, which then will follow the program requirement but will not give you that quality visual result that you look for example, Midjourney. So it's a balancing act. You should always support your designs with AI, with real resolved architectural solutions and drawings, 3D CADs, all these things, to make sure that you let the client know at very least that you're not just typing some words and then letting that be your result, but you actually have a plan to feasibly implement this in real life, and that's the important part of it.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. This was the last question. We still have some questions, but we will answer these and send them along with the recording of the webinar after this talk. And thank you all for your presence, and we hope to see you for the final talk on AI series with Leo Stuckart from Amsterdam Architect Practice, MVRDV. All details on this talk, together then with the Q&A and recording of this talk, will be sent to you via email. Thanks and have a great day. Thank you, Tim, again, and see you. Bye.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Bye.